I want to give a shout out to my dad real quick, and I'll get to it why. But my dad really rammed in my head growing up that leadership is a highly important quality, right? Um, and because that was rammed in my head so much, I think I can identify a good leader when I see it, and I do think that you have identified yourself as one of the best leaders in the NBA. But that leadership was put to the test recently, right? August 26, 2020. That's a day for the history books, and I think you remember that day. That's when Sterling Brown and the Milwaukee Bucks, they made the decision, we're not going to play tonight. We're going to have a player strike. Everyone identified that as a strike, not a boycott, because that was a withhold of labor. They made that decision. So what I'd like for you to do, if you don't mind, can you walk us through what your role was and really just your feelings and emotions upon hearing about Jacob Blake and the 7 bullets that were put into his back when you heard about the decision that Milwaukee made, the role that you had to take on as the president of the NBPA, balancing all of those different things that were going on, all of the nuts and bolts that were happening. Can you walk us through that process within that time frame and what it felt like for you as a leader?
Yeah, man. I probably haven't had that feeling too often as far as sort of overwhelmed and you sort of got to take it all in. But what was happening in the bubble was, and I'll just give y'all a little perspective from a player, is that you're sort of away from your family, right? And so you're here. And while I'll tell you some things about it, I think there were a lot more positives than negatives when it comes to the bubble, but there are, ups and downs when you're in a situation like that. And so the games are happening every other day, right? Everything is happening so fast, and we're away from our families, and social injustice stuff is still occurring, right? So you're like, man, I'm trying to be this best athlete, best player that I can be, but I'm not okay with what's happening, right? But the day is still going on, right? So we're seeing this stuff that's happening on our phone, and we're like, man, I want to do something about it. Then they're like, you got pregame, it's time to play. And you're actually not having an opportunity to take it all in. And so as the different things happen, myself, Jaylen Brown, Andre Iguodala, a lot of us were dealing with things in real time. And actually the day before, that was on August 26th, you said? Sorry, all this stuff rang.
August 26th, yeah.
August 25th, myself and Andre Iguodala had went over and had a meeting with the Celtics and the Raptors, who weren't sure they were going to play their next game, right? So then on the 26th, I actually had talked to Adam that morning or whatnot, didn't know anything. So, when you show up to the game, we were pulling into the arena, and that's when my phone started going crazy. And it immediately became a discussion, right? It's a discussion. This is what's going on right now. And I had teammates on the bus look back at me. And so, once, you don't know what's going on, you're like, okay, gotta get on the phone. I think Braun called me, Dame Lillard called me, and then we started communicating. We started figuring it out, because it's one of those things that you sort of deal with it. And us as a brotherhood, when we saw what Milwaukee did, it was like, we stand with them, right? We stand with them. And then the next thing that I tried to do was make sure we had a meeting, right? Like everybody, like, because of COVID and everything has to be socially distant, right? I'm not saying we threw it out the window with our meeting. We had the chairs socially distant, but we needed to talk. We needed to talk. And the whole time we had been down there in Orlando, all of our talks had been like this. It had been over Zoom, right? We had did a call with First Lady Michelle Obama, and the WNBA ladies got on there, and everything was Zoom. But when this happened, we needed to talk face to face. So I made a couple phone calls. Amazing lady at the NBA, Kelly Fateau, she is a rock star for the things that she's been controlling. They took out one of the courts in a ballroom, right, where a lot of teams was practicing, coordinated, let the coaches know we wanted them at the meeting. The referees wanted to come to the meeting, but it was a hard decision to say no to them, and it wasn't anything personal, but I knew just from experience that we needed to have real conversations. And the only way that can happen sometimes is if players are comfortable with the people in the room, right? And tell you the truth, we had the coaches in there initially, then a few guys said they didn't want the coaches in there. That was neither here nor there, respected their decision. Coaches left. But what it did was it gave us an opportunity to talk face to face, let everyone get their real, raw emotion feelings out. In the meeting, sure it's been documented everywhere, got a little heated here and there or whatnot. Cool. At the end of that meeting, we said, all right, everybody go back to your room, take all this in that everybody talked about. Let's come back tomorrow and we'll figure it out. So my 15th year in the league, been with the union now since like 2008, never seen anything like it. And I'm grateful because I feel like it's a turning point in our league, whereas a lot of guys spoke in that meeting that would maybe not have spoken. And the coaches who spoke up, let me give a quick shout out to, because y'all probably, but John Lucas, who was assistant coach of mine in Houston, who's a former player, man, he gave one of the best speeches I ever heard in my life. Like in my life, like the way he spoke, and as a former player who remember when the salaries were a certain thing, and he had everybody in there laughing, and he was serious at the same time. Doc Rivers spoke really well, and so did Armand Hill. Armand Hill is a former player in the league, assistant coach for the Clippers, but whenever you're in a lot of these different type conversations, you want as much wisdom, right? A lot of times people say old people. No, I say wisdom. It's wisdom because these people have been through things like this before.
No doubt. You said a lot that resonated, particularly with me, man, especially at the top of what your response was. When you say you have all these things that you're trying to digest, but you got to go out there and hoop because, you got a job to do and you have to still go through the motions of daily life. I guarantee you that resonated with every single Black person in this room. Because, even about hearing the Breonna Taylor, the ruling there, I still had midterms that week. I still had, papers to do. And that's something that's difficult to go through. But I want to talk about what came out of that meeting. You guys had discussions with the ownership and you agreed on committees and more social justice messaging during the playoffs, and converting the arenas into voting places for people to go and make their voices heard, kind of tying in with LeBron's more than a vote, making sure everybody makes their voices heard. And I'm not going to lie to you, man, as impactful those things are going to be, and I have no doubt that those things will have a strong impact, I do think that it's incumbent on the NBA governors that they do a little bit more and they get their hands a little bit dirtier than that rather than just throwing money at it and opening up their stadiums. What does it look like from y'all's point of view as the players in terms of holding these guys a little bit more accountable moving forward?
Yeah, that's great that you say that. And I think for us players, first and foremost, we wanted to have a conversation, right? We wanted to talk to them and let them know what we're passionate about. So obviously the George Floyd police bill, right? If you sort of know about that, like that's a big thing. And guys are in the bubble fighting for these different social justices. And we understand that the governors of our teams, what role they play in, right? So once again, we play the games, right? Like we're athletes, like we're not experts on these different issues, but we do have access to them. So with us starting this coalition, right, this justice coalition, because that's the thing, we had to decide, like, if we go back and play, is this going to stop like social justice from happening? No, not really, not if we're playing. Like we can use our platforms, but we really wanted to have something sustainable and continue to grow so that when something does happen, we do have these resources and these experts who have sort of been lining up a path, right? So Hakeem Jeffries, right? We had a call with him the other day, the union congressman. And I told him as athletes, we like to know, right? Like if I eat like this, if I train like this, I'll have an opportunity to win the championship. He was amazing the other day and talking to us about, you need to do this, if the Senate is flipped, this is how you get this, right? So us as athletes, like we want to know what we need to do step by step. And I think that's what we sort of found out. And that was the first time, like I said, my 15 years, there's been a conversation like that with all the governors, right? Like where it was players and we sat there and we told them, we was like, look, this is what we need, like starting right now, right? This is what we need. And like J.R. Smith, I don't know if you guys saw, he actually called Newark's mayor and got that set up as a polling center, right? So everything happens in steps, right? And so you start somewhere, and I think we're gonna continue to grow like that.